I'm Patricia Villone with CTV News, and joining me now is Dr. Thomas Hicks. He's a clinical psychologist with his company, which is called Anxiety Treatment Resources. And you're going to talk to us a little bit about some of the problems that people are having. You actually treat anxiety disorders, and you've seen a lot of that, I understand, because of the pandemic.
Well, my client base is really people who, at this point at least, had anxiety disorders prior to the pandemic. So it's sort of seeing a window into how the anxiety disorder population has been affected by the onset of the pandemic. I've had fewer cases that, just for availability reasons, that I've started where the anxiety is directly stemming from the pandemic. And I think that those calls have probably been somewhat suppressed just by stay-at-home orders, as well as social distancing concerns, et cetera. I think most people are sort of putting, medical and health appointments of all types on hold for now, whether that be the dentist or seeing a psychologist. Although telehealth is certainly available, and those platforms and technologies improve so much that really nationwide now, if people need help or professional assistance with mental health issues, they should be able to receive that through a telehealth platform.
So what kinds of anxiety issues have you been treating? What kinds of things do you see?
Sure. So our clinic treats the full range of anxiety disorders. So this would include things like obsessive compulsive disorder, health anxiety, panic disorder, social anxiety. And then among all of the anxiety disorders, there's a really high rate of comorbidity with associated mood disorders like depression. So it's more often the case than not, if someone has a true anxiety disorder, that they probably have associated mood symptoms as well.
And when you talk about that associated mood disorders, what kinds of things are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, generally depression or dysthymia, where a person who has an anxiety disorder, it's a depressing state to live in, that you're limited in kind of achieving your full potential or experiencing all that the world has to offer. And I'm talking even, prior to any of the lockdown or anything like that. People where they're really limited by their own avoidance behavior because there might be particular situations or conditions or behaviors that they're not able to engage in because of the associated anxiety.
And do you have some coping mechanisms that you might suggest to people who are suffering from this at home right now?
Yeah, I think one of the things about the lockdown and stay-at-home orders and social distancing that is so unique is that it has really broken everyone out of their normal routines. So, most of us have a sort of a framework that we organize our days around that's based on our work schedule, or for younger people, our school schedule, and all of that's kind of out the window currently. So I would really encourage people, to the extent possible, to recreate that structure in their life. So, if you're homeschooling your kids, like so many parents are struggling with right now, to actually create some kind of ongoing schedule or framework that's not only going to, contain things for them, but it's going to give that sort of framework for their kids to build around. And same thing for people working from home. There's a real tendency when people work from home for that work-life balance to actually go in a negative direction, that it feels like, well, I'm working from home, so I can always be working. So I think it's really important to set up some containment, as far as kind of having a work day, or ideally even designating a part of your home that kind of represents your office, where you can have time on the clock and time off the clock. Where you might be not available as far as being reached by colleagues or boss or whoever. It's setting up those boundaries, I think, is pretty crucial. The other thing I would mention just in general, and this is true not only during a pandemic but at any time, is really making sure that you make time for behaviors or activities that are associated with positive mental health. So it's all the things that I think most people would probably think of. Making time to get regular physical exercise, making sure that you're continuing to get a steady diet of social interaction, even if during this period those interactions are virtual or distanced or different than what is normal. I think it's really important to, I don't know that anyone right now has the luxury of saying, I don't like Zoom calls, I'm going to wait for this to be over. This is going on too long, and we have to stay connected to one another. We have to maintain those relationships with family and friends. I guess something specific to the pandemic I would recommend is this idea of compartmentalization of information related to the pandemic. We're all inundated. It's just a steady stream of information, sometimes conflicting or rapidly changing information about the pandemic and our response and how to keep yourself safe. And I think it's overwhelming to everyone. So with a lot of my clients, I've encouraged them to kind of set up specific times when they allow themselves to consume information about the pandemic. So you might set aside a 30-minute or 60-minute block of time all right, I'm going to allow myself to watch a news program or podcast, or get online and read what's going on in the world. I'm not, in any way suggesting people put their head in the sand. I think we all need to stay informed, and we need to, be able to keep ourselves safe. But at the same time, I don't know that requires constantly being tuned in to just the steady stream of information about the pandemic that's constantly, coming across the airwaves and our screens all the time.
There is certainly a lot of information, and these are some great suggestions. We really appreciate you joining us. Dr. Thomas Hicks, thank you.
Thanks.